that I think lend themselves really well to a tournament like this, where you know Marco Silva is going to bring an offensive team. What's the defensive core that you're going to come up with to sort of counteract that? And so I think we're going to jump into their teams in a moment, but I think that I'm just very interested in the approach that Adi's chosen to take going into this.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very, nice to see what goes into this. And talking about what we can see, we have their teams on the screen now. Ogerpon, Clefairy, Iron Bundle, Iron Hands, Kingambit, Salamence coming out from Aditya here, which is, again, a very balanced team like we saw coming out from Italy last time. So, maybe we did call it a little bit where we said, well, see both of them switch up teams. And it seems that they have done. Of course, some fan favorites there coming through in that Clefairy, who is a recent addition in the newest DLC to the Pokemon ecosystem. So it's nice to see how that Pokemon comes on through, and something that has caught my eye there is that Sing as like a kind of be-all, end-all, fill the fourth slot sort of role there. Because, hitting a Sing is fun, but hitting it with a Clefairy sounds even more accomplishing for a team such as this.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that also there's just a lot of options from the follow me flowcharts that Adi can come up with on this team. If you get the right position where Clefairy can redirect an attack and allow a Swords Dance on that Ogerpon, or a Swords Dance on the Kingambit, or a Tailwind on that Salamence, especially with the fake out options from Iron Hands as well, it feels like there's a lot of ways that Adi can find strong positions and be able to leverage them. And we know that he's an expert at doing things like that from accomplishments like the Vancouver Regionals Top 8 in 2022, where he had a really interesting team that had a lot of leveraging cool positions. There was like a Gothitelle, an RVGC Live Competition Series 6 champion, Rose Tower Quarantine Challenge champion, and a Madison Regionals Top 8 back in 2018. Just a very accomplished player who definitely knows his way around the types of tools that he's chosen to bring into this match. And so I think we have a good match in store with what Adi's able to use against Marco Silva.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to see all these tools that go through. Of course, one thing that also did catch my eye at the bottom there was the Salamence has a Rocky Helmet as its item of choice, with Roost over Protect as that sort of like last slot, which is going to be nice to see because Salamence is known as one of these Pokemon that is either just doing loads of damage at like a Choice Spec set or a Choice Band set, or it's, got a Choice Scarf to be a very niche supportive Choice Scarf variant. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it does come to the matchup, what sort of role it plays by having that Rocky Helmet there. One would think it's maybe for like Dondozo, so you can put pressure on Dondozo or onto Urshifu's, because both of your main attacking damage isn't doing much damage to it. But let's see how that does prevail in this matchup, because on the other side of the field here will be Marco Silva, who is bringing a standard team of the Rillaboom, Urshifu, Tornado score. Goldengo making a return again on the stream with its lovely little pair of glasses and the choice specs. Ogerpon is coming back as well, so very similar to what we saw earlier on the stream from Taiwan. And then Regidrago does round it out with its Dragon's Maw plus Draco Blade combination that everyone loves to use because it's so strong in formats like this.
I think we know from a lot of the accomplishments from Marco Silva, the LAIC champion, the OCIC champion, World's Top 16 in 2023, and a regional champion in 2019, that he's really accomplished at finding the right ways of leveraging things like tailwind offense, things like powerful offensive pressure. And I think it's an interesting angle to, in an online tournament where people know that and are preparing for that, to try to find different approaches that one can use for different types of attacks that you're using for offense. And going for special attacking Regidrago and Goldengo, Dragon, and Steel is a really interesting approach, when I think that players might be preparing for other options that he's been known to bring in tournaments. And I think rounding that out with the Ogerpon Fire, a really potent offensive threat that maybe is easier to put on the back burner in terms of threats you prepare for because of its usage rate, is I think a really interesting strategy going into this matchup, to say, I'm going to use offense, I know I'm going to use offense, but we don't know which offense I will use, so I'll try to do something that catches you just a touch off guard.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to see what sort of off-guard nature that he goes for. Very similar to what he used at the International Championships in Latin America not too long ago. So maybe Aditya did have that prep into the arcade. He ran Tornadoes, Tailwind stuffs over in LAIC. He might run it again. It's such a common team right now that anyone could run it, and if you've done so well with it on internet, you're probably going to run it in the World Cup. And if we have seen that been hammered on the head quite well, Aditya can take very good advantage of this, especially when they have a balanced team, and this balanced team having Clefairy is a little bit bulkier than what we saw coming out from Davide in the last round for Italy. But we'll have to see how well that does go through, as I do believe game 1 is getting ready to be set up for us. I'm actually quite hyped for this. Regidrago is one of my favorite Pokemon to come from the DLC in Sword and Shield, so it's nice to finally see it having its power really pushed forward to go for.
Yeah, I think Regidrago is super interesting, and as you mentioned, the Clefairy is a really important counterpoint. It has that Friend Guard and the bulk on Adi's team in general to try to be able to weather the storm of Marco's offense. It also has that immunity to Dragon Energy and Draco Meteor. Before we jump into this particular matchup, we should cover a quick point, which is that there was a team sheet error on Adi's side of the field. So Marco is entering this matchup with a Game 1 win, which puts a lot of pressure on Adi. A moment slip up will mean that Marco wins this game, but if Adi's able to use a really strong and well-constructed team to win 2 in a row, then he will be able to win this set for Italy. For India. We're about to jump into that next game and see how this Regidrago versus this Clefairy shapes up.
It'll be nice to see, because we go into something that's super offensive, but also something that's super bulky. My money, unlike last time, is going onto the balanced team, because it'll be nice to see the back and forth where they've changed team styles pretty much. I want to see the outcome change a bit, Mike. If we do see on that lead is that little fairy in herself. It is Clefairy who is going to be supporting this Ogerpon, and as you said earlier on, if you can get that Follow Me plus Sword stance, it is going to put a lot of pressure down, because Regidrago, yes, it can go for that spread damage, but Clefairy's not being hit. So actually, no, we can even see Clefairy go for Sing if it really wants to put that pressure down. It could do anything. It has its own free will on this first turn battle.
I think the really crucial question for how much free will Clefairy has is how much that Ivy Cudgel from the Ogerpon on Marco's side of the field does if he goes for a Terastallization. If that's just a one-hit knockout, then there's a lot of pressure on Adi's side of the field, because the Ivy Cudgel could finish off the Clefairy, and then the Dragon Energy could finish off the Ogerpon without the Friend Guard to reduce that damage. But if Clefairy is able to survive, then that gives a lot more options for Adi. We see he's just going for a Protect to start. Maybe doesn't want to find out just yet if that Ivy Cudgel is going to get that KO, or just stay a little bit more safe.
It is just going for that safe option, just trying to see going where Ivy Cudgel goes into the Regidrago. It does a large chunk given the Dragon typing. The Ivy Cudgel in return goes into the Clefairy, hitting that Protect. If we see Dragon Energy comes on through, goes into Ogerpon and does an equally as massive chunk in return as it did back, even when it had taken damage already, showing just how powerful Regidrago with all of its boosts can be this early on in the game.
Speaking to how powerful Regidrago with boost can be, I think that was the play that let Aditya take the least damage in this particular situation, reducing the power of the Dragon Energy and making sure that Friend Guard stayed active, and even taking the least amount of damage possible, Ogerpon still lost half of its hit points. There is an important facet here that this Ogerpon is sort of chipping this Regidrago down and might be able to do enough with Terastallization and Helping Hand to be able to pick up a KO. But it's definitely going to be close. Regidrago has so much hit points that it has a decent amount of bulk as well.
It has a really good amount of bulk, and is one of those Pokemon that relies heavily on it. It has a really good special attack stat, really good bulk stat, and doing loads and loads of damage with both of those in tandem. Of course, showing how strong it can also be is an Ogerpon that's got pretty much every boost you can think on it right now. Goes to the Ivy Cudgel and gets the knockout, something that you rarely ever see when a fire type attacks into a dragon type. Let's to see what the Ivy Cudgel comes out from return does, and it goes into that Clefairy, doing a large chunk that just lives in the yellow there, allowing Clefairy to stay around for one more turn.
Even with a critical hit, Clefairy survived that quite convincingly. I think that speaks to the way that Adi may have trained this Clefairy, and the amount of options he might have going forwards against something like this Ogerpon. We love to see the Ogerpon being able to get that KO. I think that was really impressive, and it gives Adi a lot more options in this match. But it has cost him a lot of resources. He's burned his Terastallization, he's down fairly low hit points on 2 Pokemon, and Marco's just lost 1 and now has brought in a Tornadus to be able to have Tailwind advantage, and still has his own Ogerpon in position to be able to maybe finish off that Clefairy or do a good chunk to that Ogerpon. So it feels like Marco definitely has a chance for the momentum to swing back in his favor, as we see he's using his own terrestrialization on this turn.
Yeah, he's getting his terrestrialization up and is going to be getting the Ogerpon to be in its big fiery state as well. So now there's a bit of pressure coming out from both players now, and where Marco's team is a lot more fence orientated, we can only assume that this Ogerpon is going to be even stronger. Clefairy goes to protect, making sure it's not taking any damage from anything coming out from this turn. With Bleak Windstorm coming on through, it's going to hit into protect of the Clefairy and is going to hit on the Ogerpon, who actually takes it very, very well. And now I can see how much retaliation comes through. There's no speed drop, which is a bit unfortunate. It does go into the Tornadus, who doesn't take it, but it goes down to that Sash. So allowing it to stay around for one more turn here and giving more room for a Tailwind later on, or something of the likes, depending on what sort of field state we're on. After this turn, this Ogerpon does drop to its mirror.
That's such a crucial use of an item from Marco's side of the field. There's just so many options with this Tornadus having the Focus Sash, and not a lot of options for Adi to be able to pick up that KO now that it's at 1 hit point. Marco is now in a position where he still has his terrestrialized +1 attack Ogerpon, and Adi has lost his. Even though he got a lot of damage out of it, I think that Adi is just continuously losing some options each turn with being able to redirect attacks, even with Clefairy being low, with being able to do damage without Ogerpon being lower. There's the Iron Bundle, and it does have Icy Wind to finish off the Tornadus, but really nothing on Adi's side of the field wants to take a +1 terrestrialized Ivy Cudgel from the Ogerpon on the other side of the field.
Is not going to want to take it whatsoever, but you know, with the speed opportunities as well as the follow me's coming through, you can see how it goes. And if the Hydro Pump hits, it could possibly go through, but it is an Icy Wind just to try and keep things slow and make sure you get rid of that Tornadus as well. So Tornadus being gone, there's no more shenanigans going on that side of the field, and with the speed drop onto the Ogerpon, it means it's not going to be as fast as it once was, which means that you can deal with it a bit better with Pokemon in the back. But to see how things go, of course, Clefairy is going to be knocked out, so that Friend Guard is gone. And let's see who comes into the back to kind of deal with the situation. Now the Iron Bundle has got that speed going, as it is that Salamence who is the final Pokemon here.
Salamence, after the speed drop on the other side of the field, definitely gives a lot of options. One crucial facet here, though, is that the Urshifu on Marco's side of the field is Choice Scarf. So the Salamence doesn't really have a hope about speeding the Urshifu unless the Iron Bundle went for an Icy Wind. But I'm pretty sure that Iron Bundle does not want to go for an Icy Wind because it has that Hydro Pump option into the Ogerpon. Definitely the right Pokemon for Adi to have in the back, though. That Salamence has so many options into specifically the attackers that Marco has left.
That is very true. As well as the pressure is put down, that Intimidate, you know, you get that close combat, but it still gets the knockout there, just showing how strong this Pokemon is. And you know, maybe that Bundle is inclined to be more of an offensive and speedy version of Bundle. Not worrying about any physical bulk, but then we just see an Air Slash going on down onto this Urshifu, knocking it out, which means it is now a very, very vacuum situation where an intimidated Ogerpon is hitting into this Dragon type Pokemon that resists. It still does a massive chunk, and yeah, because I've heard it doesn't make contact, it didn't take any recoil damage from that Rocky Helmet. So Salamence is now on a timer because you can only roost, you can only do so much for so long before everything goes in your favor.
That's really tough. I suppose you could roost until the Ivy Cudgel runs out of power points, maybe, but even then things are a little bit tough and there's a pretty high chance of a critical hit at some point. I guess the one option that Adi has here that's really interesting is he can try to get lower damage, like roost until he gets a lower damage roll, as has just happened, to reduce the chance of that being a 2-hit KO. I think that's particularly interesting. It feels like Adi has some options here to try to optimize the endgame, especially because he has that Air Slash that has the chance to flinch, and that Draco Meteor, which might be pretty close to a KO on the Ogerpon, depending on how it's trained from Marco's side of the field. Salamence, maybe not in the best possible situation, but definitely has some options here.
It does have options, and an unfortunate thing as well is when it does come to using its attacks, all 2 of its damaging moves unfortunately aren't the most accurate moves, and that's going to be something that's going to play a big part. The Draco Meteor does come through and does a massive chunk to the Ogerpon, but at that cost of taking loads of damage from the stat drop, and loads of damage goes out anyway. That wasn't even a crit, that was just raw damage going down. So now Salamence has to rely on maybe getting a knockout. You can't roost anymore because you have to run that risk, and it does miss the knockout.
Oh, that was so close. There were so many damage rolls at the end here. So sorry to jump in. I just am so impressed by the way Adi played this, to just trying to get as much damage as he could before the Ivy Cudgels finished him off. He got the survival of the 2 hits from the Ivy Cudgel, but even still, Marco just had this really interesting take on the Ogerpon. I loved the amount of bulk it had. It was slower than the Tornadus we saw earlier. It was just a very different take on that Pokemon that I think was really cool.